Happiness is often misunderstood. Many people wait for the right conditions before allowing themselves to feel joy. They say, "I'll be happy when I get this job, when I fix this problem, when life becomes easier." But the truth is, life will never remove all its obstacles. If you postpone happiness until the world around you is perfect, you will be waiting forever. The deeper understanding is that happiness is not something you stumble upon. It is a conscious choice, a deliberate act of the will. Think about this. The same situation can be lived by two people in completely different ways. One person suffers endlessly, another finds strength and even peace. What separates them is not the external condition but the inner decision. Choosing to be happy, especially in hard times, is not pretending that pain doesn't exist. It is the wisdom to acknowledge pain, yet refuse to let it define your entire existence. Philosophers and monks alike teach this principle: the mind is the real battlefield. If you believe happiness must come from outside, then you have given away your power. But when you see happiness as a state you generate from within, you become independent of circumstances. This is not easy, of course. It takes training, it takes discipline, it takes practice. But just like training the body builds strength, training the mind builds resilience. Happiness in hardship is a kind of defiance. It is saying to the challenges, "You will not break me." It is a reminder to yourself that even in the middle of storms, you still have the ability to smile, to breathe, to appreciate something small yet beautiful. These small acts of inner choice are not insignificant, they accumulate. Each time you choose joy in the face of difficulty, you are strengthening your spirit. It helps to see happiness as a practice, not a result. Every morning you can practice gratitude for what you already have. Every evening you can reflect on one good thing that happened, no matter how small. The act of directing the mind toward light does not deny the darkness, but it prevents you from being consumed by it. This is the essence of spiritual protection. Your own decision to align with joy rather than despair. There will always be moments when sadness arises. To push yourself toward happiness does not mean suppressing emotions. It means allowing them, but not living inside them forever. Acknowledge the pain, honor it, but then remember, you are not your pain. You are the one who observes it. And the observer has a choice. If you take this seriously, if you begin to practice happiness as a decision rather than a condition, you will find something extraordinary. Your external life begins to change as well. Because when you bring joy into your heart, you carry a different energy into your relationships, your work, your daily challenges. People respond to you differently, and difficulties lose some of their power over you. So remember this simple but profound truth: happiness is not waiting for you in the future. It is waiting for you in your decision today. Pain has a way of convincing us that life is unfair, that we are victims of circumstances we cannot escape. When difficulties arrive, our first instinct is often resistance. Why me? Why now? Why this? Yet the deeper wisdom is not to fight against pain, but to reinterpret it. Struggle is not always an enemy, sometimes it is a messenger. If you can learn to see hardship not as a punishment but as a teacher, then what once felt unbearable becomes meaningful. Think about the nature of growth. A seed must crack open before it becomes a tree. Muscles must be torn before they grow stronger. Fire must burn away impurities before gold can shine. In the same way, life uses discomfort to prepare us for transformation. When you reframe pain as part of the process, you begin to move from despair into resilience. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift in perspective changes everything. Psychology tells us that our interpretation of events matters more than the events themselves. Two people can go through the same difficulty, yet one feels destroyed while the other feels refined. What makes the difference is perception. If you view pain as senseless, it will break you. If you view pain as purposeful, it will shape you. In that sense, hardship is not just suffering, it is raw material for inner strength. Of course, reframing pain does not make it disappear. Loss still hurts, betrayal still stings, failure still disappoints. But when you recognize that these experiences carry lessons, they stop being meaningless. They become part of your training. Every hardship becomes an exercise in patience, every betrayal a lesson in discernment, every failure a test of resilience. And the more you practice seeing life this way, the stronger your mind becomes. Philosophically, this approach aligns with ancient wisdom traditions that emphasize the role of suffering in human development. The Stoics taught that adversity reveals character. The Shaolin philosophy reminds us that the body and mind grow through discipline, through strain, through pushing beyond comfort. In both cases, hardship is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace because it reveals what is hidden inside us. When you reframe pain as a teacher, you also reclaim your power. Instead of being crushed by challenges, you rise through them. Instead of fearing the next obstacle, you welcome it as part of your evolution. This attitude does not make life easy, but it makes you unshakable, and that is a far greater gift than ease or comfort. So, When life feels heavy, remind yourself, this is not happening to me, this is happening for me. That simple reframe changes your posture, your mindset, your energy. Pain may not vanish, but it gains a purpose. And purpose is what allows you to keep moving forward. When life is hard, emotions can feel like waves crashing without warning. One moment there is calm, and the next there is frustration, sadness, or fear. Many people believe they must wait for emotions to settle before they can regain peace. But this places them at the mercy of circumstance. What truly stabilizes the mind is not waiting for calm, it is discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as harshness or strict rules, but in reality it is a form of inner structure, a steady rhythm that keeps you balanced when life becomes unpredictable. Think of a person who trains daily, not because they feel like it every day, but because they understand the value of consistency. Their body becomes strong, but more importantly, their mind becomes steady. The same principle applies to happiness. Without discipline, your state of mind is dependent on external events. With discipline, you create a foundation that allows you to experience stability even when chaos surrounds you. Simple practices build this foundation. Waking up at the same time, practicing mindfulness, keeping the body active, writing down a few things you are grateful for. These may seem small, but together they create a structure for the mind to lean on. When difficulties strike, instead of being completely consumed, you return to these habits, and they hold you steady. This is why discipline is not about restriction, it is about freedom. Freedom from being controlled by every passing emotion. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. The mind is like a wild horse. It resists control, it wanders, it gets restless. Discipline is the training that tames it. When you sit in meditation for 10 minutes each day, you are not just practicing stillness, you are teaching the mind to obey you instead of the other way around. When you choose to go for a walk instead of scrolling endlessly through distractions, you are strengthening the muscle of self-command. Every small act of discipline builds emotional resilience because it proves to you that you are not helpless. You can choose your response. Philosophically, discipline reflects harmony with natural law. The sun rises and sets each day without fail. The seasons come in their rhythm. Life itself follows discipline. And when we align ourselves with structure, we live in greater balance. In contrast, when we abandon discipline, we fall into disorder, and disorder breeds despair. This is why those who train the body and the mind daily can walk through storms without being shattered. Happiness is not built on fleeting inspiration, but on disciplined practice. It is not about avoiding struggle but preparing yourself for it. When you know that you have habits and practices to return to, you carry a quiet confidence into every challenge. You know that whatever life brings, you have the inner strength to remain steady. So, do not wait for motivation to arrive. Build discipline, and let discipline carry you through. One of the greatest causes of human suffering is the attempt to control what is beyond our reach. We cling to outcomes, to people, to circumstances, and when life inevitably refuses to bend to our will, we feel broken. But the truth is that much of what happens in life is outside of our control. We cannot dictate how others act. We cannot prevent every misfortune, and we cannot escape change. What we can govern, however, is our response. And this is where the power of detachment begins to unfold. Detachment does not mean apathy. It does not mean you stop caring about people or outcomes. It means you recognize the limits of your influence, and within those limits, you act with full presence and intention. Beyond those limits, you release. Think of it like sailing on the ocean. You can adjust your sails, you can study the currents, you can prepare your vessel, but the wind will still blow as it wishes, and the waves will rise and fall according to forces far greater than yourself. If you fight the ocean, you will only exhaust yourself. If you align with it, you will find a way forward. Psychology supports this deeply. Research shows that people who focus on what they can control, such as their attitude, their actions, and their mindset, experience lower stress levels and greater resilience. In contrast, those who obsess over things outside of their influence often fall into anxiety, frustration, and despair. Why? Because they are wrestling with reality, trying to win a battle that cannot be won. Letting go of that battle is not weakness, it is wisdom. Detachment also creates clarity. When you release the need to control outcomes, you free your energy to focus on what actually matters: your growth, your behavior, your state of mind. This does not mean you stop pursuing goals or caring about results. It means you pursue them without attachment, knowing that the process itself carries meaning, regardless of the final outcome. You can give your best effort without tying your happiness to success or failure. Philosophically, this echoes the wisdom of both East and West. The Stoics emphasized the dichotomy of control, distinguishing between what is within us and what is beyond us. Buddhist thought speaks of attachment as the root of suffering, encouraging us to let go of the illusion of permanence. Both traditions arrive at the same truth: peace is found not in controlling life, but in aligning with it. Detachment is ultimately about trust, Trust that life has its rhythm, that not every closed door is a tragedy, that even losses can hold hidden blessings. When you detach from what you cannot control, you stop living as a prisoner of outcomes and begin living as a student of the present moment. You discover that happiness is not dependent on the world's cooperation, but on your inner posture toward it. So when you face uncertainty, remind yourself you cannot command the storm, but you can steady the ship. When life feels unbearable, it is natural to ask, why me? Pain often arrives without warning, stripping away comfort and certainty. In those moments, happiness may seem impossible, even absurd, but here lies a profound truth: suffering becomes heavier when it is seen as meaningless. The moment we uncover purpose within it, the burden transforms. Struggle stops being punishment and becomes a teacher, a path, even a kind of preparation. History and philosophy remind us that human beings can endure almost anything if they believe it has meaning. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, observed that those who found purpose, even in the smallest acts of kindness or in the vision of a future yet to come, were able to endure suffering with a different spirit. His insight was simple yet powerful: we do not always choose our circumstances, but we can choose how we frame them. Meaning gives suffering direction. Psychologically, this is essential. Pain without purpose creates despair, but pain with meaning creates growth. When someone sees a setback as an opportunity to develop resilience, it shifts from being a weight to being a stepping stone. Struggle is no longer something to escape, but something to use. A failed relationship can be the ground on which someone learns self-respect. Financial hardship can ignite creativity and resourcefulness. Illness can awaken gratitude for the smallest details of life. Meaning does not erase the pain, but it redefines it. This requires courage, because it is easier to complain than to seek significance. It is easier to wish the storm away than to ask what it is teaching you. Yet every challenge carries a seed of wisdom, waiting to be discovered. The question is not, why is this happening? But, what can I learn from this? That shift in perspective changes everything. It moves you from being a victim of life to being a student of life. Philosophically, meaning in struggle reflects the deeper law of transformation. Fire consumes, but it also purifies. Pressure crushes, but it also creates diamonds. Every growth process in nature involves resistance. Trees grow stronger as they withstand the wind. Muscles develop by bearing weight. Why should the human spirit be any different? Struggle refines us, and when we embrace it with purpose, it shapes us into something greater than before. Happiness, then, is not the absence of difficulty, but the discovery of meaning within it. When you understand that hardship is part of your preparation, not your destruction, you begin to welcome it as a companion on the journey. You begin to trust that every step, even the painful ones, is leading somewhere. So when life feels unbearably hard, do not only ask how to escape the pain, ask what it is shaping within you. Ask what strength, what wisdom, what compassion is being forged through this fire. At the end of all struggle, beyond the storms of life, there is a place we often overlook: silence. Not the absence of noise in the world, but the quiet that lives within. In that silence, happiness is not something you chase, nor something you must force. It arises naturally, like water flowing from a spring that has always been there. But most of us are too distracted to notice it. We run from one worry to another, from one desire to another, never pausing long enough to hear the calm voice of our own being. To cultivate inner silence is to return to yourself, to remember that peace is not given by the world, it is discovered within. When you sit in stillness, even for a few moments, something begins to shift. The mind, which is usually restless and noisy, starts to settle. Thoughts continue to appear, but they lose their grip. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. This separation creates space, and in that space you can breathe. Happiness is not found by forcing the mind into positivity. It is found by allowing the noise to dissolve until clarity returns. Gratitude deepens this silence. Gratitude is not simply saying, thank you, for the good moments. It is a posture of the heart that recognizes the gift of existence itself. Even in hardship, there are countless things to appreciate: the air you breathe, the strength of your body, the lessons you are learning, the people who stand by you. Gratitude turns your attention away from what is missing and toward what is present. And what is present, no matter how small, can be enough to anchor happiness. Philosophically, gratitude is the recognition that nothing is owed to us. Life itself is not guaranteed, yet here we are. To take this simple fact for granted is to live blind to its beauty, but to acknowledge it is to awaken to joy in its purest form. Gratitude transforms silence from emptiness into fullness, because when you are grateful, you realize that even the simplest moment carries richness. Psychologically, cultivating silence and gratitude strengthens resilience. Studies show that practices like mindfulness and gratitude journaling reduce anxiety, increase optimism, and improve overall well-being. But beyond research, the deeper truth is that silence and gratitude anchor us when life is hard. When storms rage outside, gratitude is the reminder that there is still something steady within. When the future feels uncertain, silence is the reminder that peace is available now in this breath. Happiness, then, is not an escape from difficulty. It is the ability to find stillness and appreciation even while difficulty surrounds you. This is what it means to push yourself toward happiness, not to deny hardship, but to cultivate an inner posture that hardship cannot destroy. So the next time life feels overwhelming, pause, breathe, be still. Notice even one thing you are grateful for, and let that simple act remind you that happiness is never out there, it is always within.